Okay, good evening. Today's daf is Vav. We're up to Hey Yomid Beis, a little past the halfway point. The first words are on the line of Omer of Ach, Omer of Chanan of Yaakov Bar Idi. So we saw the shita of Abaya that if you have a kuti and you have a gadol oimed al gabav, a yisrael is oimed al gabav, that the shita lechatchila, as long as you check the knife, would be good. According to a Rav, it's even yaitz of a nichnas, but the shchita of a kuti would be good. This l'chayr is according to the opinion that the kutim were gerei emes. The kutim were gerei emes. We're familiar that the kutim had a problem with lions, and therefore perhaps it was is a forced gerus. And so we have different gemaras and shas go back and forth. So that was the pshat in the Mishnah initially. Now we're going to get down to the halacha l'maisa. Now you get down to halacha l'maisa. So I'm Rav Chanan Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi. I'm Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Mishum Bar Kapara. Now, guys, that's the simon of Niklaf. The nun is Chanan. The kuf is in Yaakov. The lamed is in Levi, and the pei is in Bar Kapara. Okay, that's the Niklaf. If you want to know what the simon is, so they said. Reb Gamliel ubeistino machlokas. Which Rebbe Gamliel? One opinion it's the son of Rebbe. In other ones it's Rebbe Gamliel of Yavne, fame. Reb Gamliel ubeistino nimnu al shchitas kutei ve'asruha. They came together and they concluded that the shchita of a kutei is isura. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean without or even with? Some Rebbe say Rabbi Yaakov Baridi Shema lo shama Rebbe ella b'shein Yisrael oimed al gabav. After all, Abaye said lechatchila you could shech, and now you're telling me that maybe what? And these were Tanoim. Reb Gamliel was a Tana. So now Reb Zeir is saying to Reb Yaakov Bar Idi, right? He's saying to him, and again, Reb Chanan and Reb Yaakov Bar Idi was the Murder Shmaitza. He says to him, maybe you heard it's only us if there was no one standing over him shech. Amalei said Reb Yaakov to Bar Idi to Reb Zeira. Dummy, high merabanan could like give me an right? It's like you never learned a word in your life. It's a little like you never learned anything. So he goes, what do you mean you never learned anything? Right? What did he tell him? Right? B'shein Yisrael oimed al gabav lememra boy. In other words, is it necessary to asa when Yisrael is not standing over him? Of course, it's asa. The lichatchila it was if the Yisrael was standing. Right? You're going to tell me you needed an asa when Yisrael was not standing? Of course not. So said Rav Yaakov Abidi, when did they asa? I feel Yisrael, oimed al gabav it's asa. I feel Yisrael, oimed al gabav it's asa. And we'll see why in today's talk, why they asa, okay? But again, according to this, we're saying that this Bezdin, Rav Gamliel and his Bezdin, they asa shchitas kute. Guys, period. Even if Yisrael is there, it's asa. Period. It's asa. His shchita is asa. That's it. Okay. Now, Kiblamine was Reb Zeira Mekabel from Reb Yaakov Baridi, or like Kiblamine, where he wasn't. Was he Mekabel what he said? That even Yisrael Emel Gabav it's asa, or not? So Toshma, Dom Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Rav Asi, Ani Roisi es Reb Yochanan, I saw Reb Yochanan, She'achol meshchitas kuti. I saw him eat the shchita of a kuti. And after Rav Asi achol meshchitas kuti, he also ate from the shchitas kuti. Now, guys, I'm giving you a little spoilers alert. Guys, listen. If Reb Zeira was not mekabel, meaning if a Jew is standing over him, it's good, then Reb Zeira would understand why Reb Yochanan could eat. Correct? Reb Zeira is going to wonder how could Reb Yochanan eat. And then mainly you know that he was mekabel, and therefore why it was afil Yisrael Emel Gabav. Okay, says the Gemara. So I gave you that's the kinech to understand the Gemara. Again, you're telling me shchitas kuti is asa. Yeah, good. So now, and Rabbi Yaakov Ridi said that's even if Yisrael is Emel Gabav, it's asa. And now we want to know was Reb Zeira mekabel or not. Says Reb Zeira, says Reb Nachman, I saw Reb Yochanan eat, and even Reb Asi ate. V'toi bar Reb Zeira. Reb Zeira was wondering, Leishmiel lahu, did he not hear the gezerah of Rabbi Gamliel? The ihavi shmiel lahu, havi mekabla. If he would have heard it, Rabbi Yochanan and Reb Asi wouldn't have eaten. Right? If they heard it, they wouldn't have eaten. Aidilma shmiel lahu, maybe they heard it, like kibluha. And they weren't. Now, Hada Pashat Lenafshe, Reb Zeira was having this inner conversation, and he was Pashat in his head. Hada pasha linafshe. Mistabra dishmialahu. Mistabra, he heard it. That, in other words, Mistabra, they heard that what? That shchitas kuti is asra filu Yisrael oimin al gabav. V'loy kibluha. And they, Rav Asi and Rabbi Yochanan, were not mekabel the psak of Rabbi Gamliel. The isal kedaitach loy shmialahu. Let's say they didn't hear it, and therefore meaning, and had they heard it, the have shmialahu having mekabel. If they would have heard the psak, they would have listened. Would Hashem allowed it that they eat Issa? Now we've had many times in Shas. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu will go ahead and make sure that a tzaddik does not eat. Guys, look at Tosfos. Tzaddikim atzmei kol shkein tema. The Ashken Yehuda ben Taboy Shaharag Eight Zoma and Perakama de Makis, Rabbi Shmuel Shakara Vehita Perakama de Shabbos. Fake Tosfos Akasha, guys. We have a case in Makis where Rabbi Yehuda ben Tabai made a mistake and killed somebody. We have a case of Rabbi Shmuel in Shabbos where he went ahead and he tipped the lamp. So how can you tell me it's tzaddik and what? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu won't let anything bad happen to a tzaddik. I just gave you 2 instances in Shas where 2 bad things happen. So here's your side, guys. So for Oimari, the dafka b'midi da'achila ain't HaKadosh Baruch Hu maybe takala yada. Right? Shegenayu l'tzadik sheichel dav yisur. I spoke out, guys, once before. When it comes to my cholos yisuris, even if you eat it, b'shoigeg, it's going to impact upon you. It's a mitzias. It's like poison. In other words, it'll be because betamte malev. It'll cause your mind to go. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to protect them. So Memela, Rabbi Zera inferenced that Rav Asi and Rabbi Yochanan must have heard, and they still didn't listen, right? Because they weren't makabel. Good. Because had they not heard, and they would have been makabel, then Hashem would have protected them from eating. Good. Hashem would have protected them from eating. And we'll get to the behemoths of tzaddik and Pinchas ben Yair. Amid Aleph. The Isal Kedaitach. And if you say that what? That Reb Zera was not makabel from Lekibel Minei, he wasn't makabel from Rabbi Yochanan Me'idi, L'shani Le, Reb Zera could have answered to himself, Kan Kish Yisrael Oimel Al Gabav, Kan Kish Ein Yisrael Al Gabav. In other words, when he was not makabel, he could have said, when did Reb Gamliel Asa, when there was no Yisrael standing? And therefore, when did Reb Yochanan Rav Asi, when there was Yisrael standing? Ella, as I told you, when you see that Rav Zera was wondering, it must be his makabel. So it's a good deal, guys. Elolav shmamina, kiblimei shmamina. So the Gemara has an inference that what? That Rav Zera must have heard, he must have makabel, because he was wondering, how could Rabbi Yochanan eat? How could he eat? In other words, if he didn't hear that, so it must be he heard. So if he heard, now, so therefore, if he wasn't makabel, he could touch up why Rabbi Yochanan ate. Rabbi Gamliel said is then what? When Yisrael was not standing over him. When did Rabbi Yochanan eat? When Yisrael was standing over him. Ella, when he was wondering, it must be why? Because he was makabel, that Rabbi Gamliel's Gezeira was even when Yisrael was over them. And even when Yisrael was standing over him, that's why he knew without a shadow of a doubt that they were not makabel. Guys, Kishmak, but there's 2 makabalas over here. Vasi Rabbi Yochanan, or Rabbi Zera was he makabel the Pesach of Yaakov Aridi. And he was makabel the Pesach. Well, my time it goes with Rabbanan. What's the reason the Rabbanim were geyser? Until now, we began the Masech, that called Sheichtin. We had 2 Amoraim who said, really only one, only Abaya, who said it's speaking about a Kuti. So why all of a sudden did they switch gears? Why did they say the Kutim not? Ki Had Rav Shimon ben Elazar, Shadrei Reb Meir Lasuye Chamra. So Reb Meir sent Reb Shimon ben Elazar to get wine, Mibei Kutoy, from the Kutim. Ashcheyahu Saba, came an old man came, and Amalei, and he said the following pasuk. He said the following pasuk to who? To Reb Shimon ben Elazar. He said, Ki teishev lilchem es Moshel bitavin, es asher lefanecha, v'samta sakin biloyecha, place a knife in your mouth, in bal nefesh ata. Meaning, place a knife in your mouth, don't drink the wine. Don't drink the wine. So, okay, don't drink the wine. That's what he said. The samta sakin b'loyecha, place the knife in your jaw, in bal nefesh ata. Halach Reb Shimon ben Elazar v'sipe dvarim l'fnei Reb Meir. Reb Shimon ben Elazar went and he told over the story in front of Reb Meir. V'gozer aleim, and Reb Meir was geyser. Now, fellas, wherever the bikutoy was, my timer, Why was he geyser? No, it's why did the Sabbath say you couldn't eat? My timer. Rav Nachman Yitzchak. The mus yoina matzu lehem b'reish hagrizim. They found an image of a pigeon, of some type of bird on hagrizim. Shayayim that they served it. Now, that's not roiv kutim. It's only in that place. Reb Meir Tamei the chayish lemiuta. And so Reb Tamei, Reb Meir is chayish lemiuta. He won't let a cotton, a person, maybe a cotton, nimtz a sris, a katana, maybe islandist, lemute, v'gazra urbo atamiuta, right? And they were geyser rubur atamiuta. So this explains why they were geyser. In other words, Reb Meir came down with the gezerah. Reb Meir said that we're chayish lemiuta, and therefore, so we're gonna have to answer up. So how? So that would only be the miyah. We're not chayish lemiuta, right? So, but meaning that oiv the avodah zara. We said yesterday a mumma la avodah zara. We don't pass like Rav Nan. We said a mumma la avodah zara is out. And as we're going to see, the kutim were more than oiv the avodah zara. They were geyser that they were goyim. They were geyser. They were goyim. So a few nekudas over here, fellas. Top toisus. This is interesting. Ahu Saba. So the top toisus. This is fascinating. Ashkei Ahu Saba. I've brought this toisus in many times. Yesh mefarshim the chalmakim shu maske Ahu Saba hu Eliyahu. Anytime the Gemara in Shas says this elder, guys, it's Eliyahu Navi. Anytime the Gemara says Ahu Saba, it's Eliyahu Navi. V'yev shaloim came beperek bama medlikin, be'uvdid of Shimon ben Yochai. There's a ma'aser guys with Shimon ben Yochai. The Ahu Saba, he called him ben Yochai. And Shimon felt bad and he died, so that couldn't have been him. No, it doesn't mean it's just that particular case, the Chidol and Pshat, just that particular case. It wasn't Reb Shimon, but it wasn't Eliyahu. But most of the time, almost all the time, it is. So Rabbi Eliyahu came and he saved them. He saved them from being over Aveira. This is an example of you won't let tzaddikim eat something that's not on the up and up. Now, they found on Har Grizim. State in the Torah, fellas, when you come to Eretz Yisrael, you're going to come to B'mokam Asher Yivcha Hashem L'Shachin Shmei Sham. You'll go up to the place that Hashem said He's going to what? He's going to place His name. So we know you're going up. So we know it's got to be a high spot. It never says Yerushalayim. Guys, the Tzaddikim held Har Grizim is the place that Hashem. That's their place. That's their place. That's their place. That's their place. They held and Har Grizim. That is their place. That is the place that Hashem chose. It's because again the Torah never says Yerushalayim. It says B'makam Asher Yivchar. Now, why Har Grizim? Look at continuous Taisis. B'medrash Yesh Shehi Avodas Kechavim Shehit Min Yaakov. This the Mus Har Grizim. This Yaina was the getchka that Yaakov put underneath the tree Bahar B'Shem. Now, guys, if you look in the Torah Kodesh, it says that Har Grizim they came. Avraham Avinu comes into Eretz Yisrael. He goes to where does he go? At Makam Hashem. He goes to Har Grizim Arevel because that is B'Makam Hashem. In other words, that's how he knew it's Har Grizim Arevel. And they found there this Yaakov Avinu Pashas Vayishlach. After they killed out Shimon and Levi killed out the city, they took the spoils. So Yaakov, before they went to Eretz Yisrael, he told them, get rid of all your stuff. Now, they were in Eretz Yisrael. They told him to get rid of all the stuff. And he buried underneath the tree, and that's what they found. So they served it because this was from Yaakov Avinu. Again, they believed somewhat in Hashem. But again, to Torah Shebechsav, they only believed in, and they made their own Shulchan Aruch. As they're still around, some of them, The Karaites, I think they're called. They're still around. They're a very small sect, but they're still around.
Haifa.
Not Haifa. No, not Grizim.
Not
Grizim.
I remember going in the 70s.
Yeah, you went
up, climbing up to the top.
And yeah,
There was a Mizbeach there.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Well, that was 50 years ago.
Okay, so now, so they were geyser. So Reb Meir was geyser on what because they found them as Oivei Avodah Zarah. Now, guys, so right now, until now, they were fine Jews. They were able to eat the shechita, right? You checked it out, right? And Rabbi Gamliel says, Rabbi Gamliel Beis Dinoi Nami. Excuse me, I said check the knife, not check the knife. You eat from their shechita. Rabbi Gamliel Beis Dinoi Nami Kreb Meir Sri Lahu. And Reb Gamliel and his Bezdin, they held like Reb Meir. And that's why they asked the what? The Shechita of a... Now, this pasuk that we just read, what's the pasuk pshat in the pasuk? In other words, Reb Eliyahu was miramis to them, take a knife and put it in your mouth, meaning don't eat. He was miramis to them, don't eat. That's what he said. Don't eat. Don't eat. That's what he told them. So what does it really mean? So again, the whole pasuk says, Ki teshev lilchaim es moishel bein tavin es hashel lefanecha. Okay. Pshatika Maksiv betalmud ayoyshev le rabbi. It's speaking about a Talmud who's standing in front of his Rebbe. The Tani Reb Chia. Ki teshev lilchaim es moishel bein tavin es hashel lefanecha v'samta sakim b'loyecha. In Bal Nefesh Ata. That's the pasuk. Now, im yodeya Talmud b'Rabbi. If the Talmud knows about the Rebbe, sheyodeya lahachsalei tam, that he can answer him, then Bain, ask him. Rashi says, ask him. Bin, ask him. Vim lav, and if he won't know, Tovin es hashel lefanecha, you figure it out for yourself. V'samta sakim b'loyecha, in Bal Nefesh Ata, right? V'samta sakim b'loyecha, but don't ask him. In Bal Nefesh Ata, Parish Imenu. If you're Bal Nefesh, leave and go get another Rebbe. So that's the pshat, that's Pasha Pshat in the pasuk. Pasha Pshat in the pasuk. Rabbi Yitzchak ben Yosef Shadri Rebavo Lasuye Chamra. So Rabavu sent Rabbi Yitzchak by Yosef to get wine. Mimi Bekutoi from the Akutim. Ashkehu Saba Amalei Les Kan Shemei Torah. Right? There's no Shemei Torah over here. Holach Rabbi Yitzchak v'sipa dvarim l'fnei Rebbe Avahu. V'holach Rebbe Avahu v'sipa dvarim l'fnei Rebbe Ami v'Ravasi. V'leizazim misham at she'osum oivdei kechayvim gemurim. They made them, guys. You hear? The first at one point it was only on the shchita and the wine, and now they're giving halachic halacha of a oivdei kechayvim gemurim. Lemai ila shchita v'yayin nesech mechasam gazer rabbanon. They didn't do that. That already Reb Meir did. He was going on the wine, and Rabbi Gamliel was going on the shchita. So therefore, they didn't do that. Inu goyzer v'li kibla mayu. They were goyzer, Rabbi Meir, and Rabbi Meir was goyzer, and they weren't makabel. You know why? He says the Teres Chaim, because there's Meir was chayish l'miyuta, and we're not chayish l'miyuta. Also, Rabbi Ami v'Ravasi and goyzer v'kibla minayu. Because at this point in time, the days of Rabbi Ami v'Ravasi, they were a roiv. This time they were a roiv. Guys, you hear? That's the dialogue according to Teres Chaim. Initially, it wasn't makabel because again it was only a miyuta that was on grizim, and then by the time it was nispashet that they were like goyim, therefore what they were goyzer on them. My oivdei kechavim gemurim. What do you mean they were oivdei kechavim gemurim? What halacha did you give them? So guys, this is outside. You know, there's an erev chatzeros. If you live in a community where you have houses opening up to a communal area. So the Chachamim were goyim midrabanon. You can't go from your house to that rishus because you may go from your house to rishus harabim. You know, you may go from rishus hayach to rishus harabim. So what we do is we put an erev chatzeros that makes it a communal property. But putting food in somebody's house, it makes it a communal property, and therefore it's only one rishus. What happens if you have a goy? What happens if you have a Jew? Let's say the Jew forgot to give to the erev chatzeros. So even on Shabbos he can be mevatel. He can be mevatel his chatzah. A goy has to rent the chatzah. A guy has to rent it. In other words, because why they make it so difficult? Because we don't want you living with goyim. We don't want you living with goyim. So that's the halacha. So now that's the halacha that's over here. So it says the Gemara, "My of the kechavim gemurah nach v'yitzuk levatel v'shus v'litem v'shus." To mevatel v'shus, like we won't let them v'litem v'shus. Uchedetanya Yisrael muma mishame shabbasay b'shuk. Yisrael Muma who keeps Shabbos in the street. In other words, he's only Mechal Shabbos b'tzina. Mevatel v'shus v'noisem v'shus. He can go ahead and be mevatel v'shus and he can give you a shus. Ushein mishaber Shabbos b'shuk. He's mefahesya ein mevatel v'shus v'noisem v'shus. Meisham Yisrael noisem v'shus mevatel v'shus. Wherever kechavim at sheyiskar. Okay. Ketzad. Ketzad. Amaloi v'shusi. How does Yisrael mevatel v'shusi kanui l'cha v'shusi mevatel l'cha? Kana. You don't need a kinyan chalipin. Okay, that's the protocol. Rabbi Zeir Ravasi iklu lepundik diyoi. Diyoi is the name of a place. They came to an inn in Diyoi. Aisila kamei beitzim hamutzokos biyayin. They brought in front of them something that sounds very geschmack. Roasted eggs and wine. Yum.
Side of liver.
With a side of liver, right? Reb Zeira lo yachol. Reb Zeira did not eat it. Ravasi yachol, and Ravasi ate it. Only Rav Zayla Rav Asi. Like chayish mal taruvis. Aren't you chayish for taruvis? Yain is mixed in with the eggs. We're not worried about the eggs. We're worried is the wine is mixed in, and we can't eat the wine of I guess this pundik of goyim. No, it's amoretz. The mai. Well, chayish mal taruvis the mai. In other words, guys, the mai is the amoretz. We chayish didn't take off ma'isa, so he has to take off ma'isa. So this the guy was the owner of the inn was an amoretz, and he wanted to say that maybe you're not chayish. So amalei, so Rav Asi told Rav Zera, lava datai. I wasn't thinking. Rav Zera, efshe gozru al taruvis demai u'mistayi milsa de Rav Asi l'meichel isura. How is it possible that they made a gezerah and he didn't know about it? And would he come to eat? Again, you see again, it's in the Dvar Achila always. Hashta mei masa shel tzadikim ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu maybe takal al yadon. Tzadikim atzmon lekol shekain. Nafig Rav Zera, dok v'ashkech. He went and he found that none. He's going to find out that Taruvis is mutter, and therefore the Rav Rasi was not over on mat on any issa. Halakech yayin lasis hamurius. Murius is fish brine, and they would buy wine to put in fish brine. So oiletoich aluntis, some type of potion, kashinon, vetch lasis mentachinin to grind, dadoshim lentils lasis and resisin, all kinds of machalos. Chay mishum demai. Since you bought the product from the Amoretz, you'd have to separate the mai. However, if you buy it mixed already, pre-mixed, then mutarin. You know why? Then shem tarubas, you wouldn't have to take off the mai. Guys, you only have to take off the mai if you bought the thing itself, the ingredient itself. But once you bought the Michael, you went to the thing is complete. In that case, you wouldn't have to, and therefore for like Gazwa, okay. And so you see that what they weren't geyser, and Mela Ravasi was good. Says Merva like Gazwa truest to mai. You're telling me again? We just digression over here. They like Gazwa truest to mai Batanya. Hanoishin l'shchenasai. A person has I guess too is Isa Lapis. You have a shchena, she's an amaretz, and you give her bread, you give her dough to bake, or a pot to cook. You're not chayish for what? For the spice, the garlic and the spice that in it. However, in other words, if you give them the ingredients, we're not chayish. But if what? A chayish that they're going to switch it. Right? They're going to swap it. But if you tell them, listen, make it from your own stuff, then chayshes l'sar v'tavlin shaba mishum shvius, right? It's shvius and mishum ma'isa. You're not chayiv ma'isa on the it's not chayiv ma'isa on the spices. Taisha says it's on the shvius on the spices, but not the ma'isa. But the bottom line is the sar is ma'isa. You see that what you are chayish, guys. You see you chayish that what she's going to put in spices. You told me that what. That it's taruvis. Shani hasam the kivin the kamala asila mishalichi. You told her go ahead and do from your own. Kiman the orav biyadayim dummy. No, Rashi speaks out. It's like that she sold it. It's be'en. If you look at Rashi, says Rashi, kivin the amal about 5 lines up. Kivin the amal asila mishalichi. Havi kamosha lachon himena like you bought it from her. Koidim taruvasan before it was mixed together. V'yachat sarfan and then it was combined together. The alpeh asasa, she's acting upon your word. V'nasis shluchai and she became a shliach. Okay, so that's why one reason. So really, taruvis is not asa. In this case, it's not a taruvis. It's like you gave it to her. It's like you made her a shliach to do it. And Rafa Mama shiny sar v'tavlin dilataima of v'taima lebatel. They're to enhance the dish. And that's not, and there something that's we know that it's not bottle. It's not bottle. Okay, and that would be 2 reasons why. Usually taruvis is not a problem with the mai, and therefore Ravasi was okay. This pshat in this Mishnah is speaking either because you said to give your own, that makes it like you gave it biyadayim, or it's speaking about spices which themselves are not bottle. Okay, now v'hatnan ulechlufe loy chashinan. Now it was clear above. You said if you give everything, you're not chayish. In other words, I'm giving it to an amaretz. I'm giving them to cook, guys. I'm giving the amaretz to cook. She can cook, and I'm not chayish. She's going to switch, and I don't have to take off the mai. Right? I'm not chayish to switching. Gemara now is going to question that. The Gemara is going to question that. That if you give it over, you're not chayish that the amaratz is going to switch. For tanan, right? Someone gives to his mother-in-law who's an amaretz. He's a finer guy, and he gives dough to his mother-in-law to go ahead and bake. Maisa eshehu noisin. He has to take maisa. He has to take maisa off what he gives her. He has to take maisa off what he gives her because he doesn't want her eating it. Guys, you don't be overlifting evil michshel, right? So you have to take maisa off before you give it to her. The eshehu noitel mimena, and you have to take maisa off from what? From giving it back. Why? What do you have to take maisa from giving it back? If they shechashuda michalafes. Let's see Rashi. Now let's say she messed it up. She'll switch it. It's a mother-in-law. Mother-in-law wants to look good in the eyes of the son-in-law, right? So what are you doing? You're going to give her a challah to bake. She burns it, messes it up. She's going to make a switcheroo. So therefore, you see your chayish. Hilkach maisa eshehu noisin. He has to give a maisa the michlafale shalay yechav noisin lefnei michshel. You should be michshel her. That's why you have to give the maisa before you give it to her. Veshu noitli menu shema hechlifa alma michlafa. And for the Gemara, hasam k'detanya taima. Amar Rabbi Yehuda ratzahi b'takonis bita ubusha mechasana. In other words, this is a special din, right? It's a special din. She wants her daughter to look good in the eyes of everything should be okay over there. Marriage is tough enough as it is. So she's not maliciously doing it. She's doing it right. She's not stealing. She's not maliciously doing this. She's going mad to the bottom Rashi. Hasam k'detama taima deletoiva he miskavenes. A kavan is good that her daughter should look good in the eyes of her husband. Aval al gezel k'goin la'odam nachri shein daitel lahachlif lahetiv loy aflahara in a chashuda. If there's no reason to suspicion, we won't be suspicious. However, the Gemara continues. Ula alma loy chashinon. In other words, all over you're not chayish, right? Vatran, the following. Hanoisin lepundikis shaloi. Now he's in an inn with a pundikis who's amaretz. Maisa eshu noisin. He gives maisa what he gave to her. Veshu noitel mimena. V'fnei mechalefesh. She's going to go ahead what and switch. And over here you don't have the svara what. Hasanami moira. She's moira heta v'amar. Babe Rav lechel chamima v'ana echel karira. Machlekes Rashi and Taisos. Let's go with Rashi. In other words, he's a Talmud Chacham, this young man. If I mess it up, I want him to eat hot food. I don't want him to eat cold food. So therefore, she's Mereheta by switching. But Stamazai, she's not going to switch. In other words, once you have a Mereheta, we understand why you're not chayish for switching. The Gemara, Uchlufe lechashina vatanya, Eishes chaver, toichenes im Eishes amaretz. The Eishes of a chaver, she can grind with the Eishes of an amaretz, and we're not worried about her eating from the amaretz. Bisman she tameya. Since she's tamei, she's going to be careful. She's a wife of a chaver. She knows how to be nisva tumatayra. Therefore, she's not going to take food that should be mitamid of food. Avaloi bisman she tahira, but not in the time that what she's tahar. Rav Shimon ben Elazar Omer, after bisman she tameya, even bisman she tameya, when she's tamei loi titchon, she shouldn't grind with her. Ifnei shechavei rasa neisenisla v'yicheles. Her friend is going to go ahead and give her from her now. The friend is going to give her from her husband. So really, she's stealing from her husband, feeding this Eishes Chava. Good. She's stealing from her husband, right? The husband didn't give her a right to go ahead, right, and
Killing us. Can't tell me suspense.
he didn't give him a right to take it, and so it's a begeder gezel. So now the Gemara says, right, hashda migzel gazla chilufim boy. If she'd steal outright, so certainly she will replace. So you see, Achayish, Rav Yosef, Hasanami, Moira, V'amra, Tura Medisha Ka'achol. A Tura, because she has to eat from the dash. In other words, she's working with me. Now, she's not going to take outright. She's working with me. Since she's working with me, I have to go ahead, what? I have to go ahead, and give her and share the food. Okay, this is the place to start.